Hello and welcome, fellow pushers. This is episode 34 of Pushing Cardboard, and let's just call this episode Vuca. We're going to take a look at 1812, Napoleon's Fateful March, a new game from them, and then I also have an interview with Patrick Gebhardt, one of the founders and leaders of Vuca games. Vuca's made quite a splash the last few years with their stunning components and games that hit the sweet spot in terms of complexity. And of course, then we'll have some news, some new games, and all the usual chatter you're used to. This episode of Pushing Cardboard is sponsored by Noble Knight Games. If there's a game you need, they've got it. Please use the link found in either the newsletter or on the website to go grab it. That way I'll get a little kickback and I'll be able to find another game to bring to your attention. It's a virtuous circle. News. As always, there are links to all the news pieces in the newsletter, so look there if you want more information. First off, I just want to mention that I'm thinking of doing a bi-weekly live YouTube show. Is there any interest out there in such a thing? I'm not totally clear on the structure yet. Sometimes it might be live interviews with invited audience participation, or sometimes it just be me with a topic and interacting with whoever shows up and comments or asks questions. Let me know what you think. I'll put a question about it in this episode's survey, but you can always reach out to me on Discord or at grant@pushingcardboard.com. On to the rest of the news. Hollandspiel has a couple new things happening. There's a new game, City of Six Moons, which is pretty wild. It comes with no instructions, and part of the game is cracking the code on how to play it. And then as well, they have an expansion for Beware the Ides of March called Crossing the Rubicon, so I'm interested in that, of course. Worthington's July newsletter is out. It has a couple Kickstarter announcements, but they never give enough lead time, so they're probably over by the time you hear this. But that said, there's often an opportunity for a late pledge, so check out their website, and maybe you can still get on the action. The one that caught my eye is a new expansion for Band of Brothers that finally takes the series to the East Front. And hey, they also mentioned they are celebrating 20 years in business, so congratulations to Worthington. I think I've mentioned Niva War Games before. They're a brand new little company, and one of the ways they're trying to distinguish themselves is by creating backstory or history pieces with great illustrations for each game. They've just finished one on their new Columbus game, so check it out. I really like the illustration styles for these, so it's worth going to their website. Another new company, Form Square, has announced their next game. Maida 1806 is another Napoleonic game, and it's heading to GameFound for funding soon. I have their most recent game, Napoleon's Eastern Empire, which deals with the Egyptian campaign, and it's got some really unique elements. I'll feature it on a future episode, and you'll be able to see what the fuss is about. For those who have been following the We Intend to Move on Your Works series from Homo Ludens, one of the participants, Stuart Ellis Gorman, has written an article for SD Hiscon's online magazine detailing what they found so far. For those who haven't heard of any of this or followed it, they're playing a giant pile of American Civil War games and then tracking how the Lost Cause myth is represented in the games, either explicitly or inadvertently. It's been a pretty cool project, plus you get to hear about a bunch of games you might not have played. I'm really enjoying it. No GMT update this time. It'll undoubtedly be released as soon as I finish recording this, but I dodged a bullet on having to go through that this time. What's on the table? I'm playing a few different ASL games at the moment, 2 scenarios, then a historical campaign game called Crossing the Morrow. This campaign game has been great fun. My Canadians are barely holding on to a hilltop village. Most of the buildings are on fire, which really takes away from their use as defensive positions. But I've really had fun relearning things like the air rules, as I've had a bunch of fighter bombers, and we both have a ton of off-board artillery. We've battered the hell of each other with that. It's a great short campaign game, only 4 dates and a medium-sized map. We're about to start the 3rd date, and a couple questions have arisen about setup areas at the start of each new scenario. The rulebook is generally excellent, but there are a couple areas that are a bit fuzzy. If you've ever played ASL, you know the size and age of that rulebook. Over the years, concepts have been continually refined and restated in order to stop rule lawyers from bending the game in their favor. So it means that the rules are tight and specific. There's no room for fuzziness, which brings us back to our game. My opponent has written to the designer in the past about a different scenario that had vague wording that didn't jibe with the ASL rulebook, and the response was along the lines of, just use your common sense, which is always a terrible response, as my friend wouldn't have been asking the question if common sense would have cleared it up. But we're going to probably try and work it out to our mutual satisfaction rather than asking the designer, as who needs to be told that they're stupid, right? I've seen a similar thing on Board Game Geek every once in a while. A player will post a question and the designer or developer will reply by simply posting the rule. But the player isn't not understanding or not finding the rule. They wouldn't be asking the question if the rule was clear to them. They're asking the question because the rule isn't clear. So, suck it up, designers. Are you trying to sell games or show off how smart you are, right? New games to the collection. A few things from Noble Knight, a math trade, a couple things on sale at my local, and some Kickstarter stuff means it's a bit of a list this time. Angels 1-5, Fighters versus Bombers in World War II. This is a Phil Sabin game that was on sale at my local store. It's a light treatment of the air war in World War II, but Sabin is an interesting designer, so I thought I'd give it a chance. Arabian Struggle. This is a pre-production prototype that Catastrophe Games sent me. You'll be hearing more of it as soon as I get it played, and it'll be, I think, going out on some kind of a crowdfunding soon. The Battle for Casino, Assaulting the Gustav Line, 1944. I bought a few old issues of S&T through Noble Knight, and this one caught my eye as I've been reading a lot about the Italian campaign the last couple of years, so I wanted to try it out. Case Yellow, 1940, the German Blitzkrieg in the West. I've also been on a bit of a France 40 jag, as you might remember from last episode, and found an unpunched copy, used but unpunched, of this Ted Racier game at my local store, and so I look forward to comparing it with the games that I've been talking about in terms of that campaign. Chancellorsville, Pinnacle of Victory. This is another one I got dirt cheap at my local. It's a Richard Berg design via Clash of Arms, I think, and I don't think it was very well received when it was published in 1991. It looks like it was published in 1991. The counters are pretty plain. The map is drab but functional, but whatever. I guess I've also seen it praised as well as slagged, so I felt like for $15 I can find out which side of the fence I'm on. Cobra, Game of the Normandy Breakout. This is another one of the S&T games, and probably the one I was most excited to get. It's a well-loved game that's been redone by Decision, but I wanted the original magazine version, and Noble Knight had a copy for me. Old School Tactical, Volume 4, The Italian Theater, 1943 to 45. This was the big Kickstarter package that arrived. I only have Volume 1 before this, but like I said, I've been interested in the Italian campaign lately, so I backed it, and here it is. It also included For the Empire. It was an add-on to the campaign. It's a map, a few counters, and a bunch of scenarios featuring either the New Zealanders or the Canadians in Italy. So that should be fun from a completely biased point of view. Operation Spark, The Relief of Leningrad, 1943. This was another game on sale that I bought just because I'm interested in the designer, Jack Rady. I saw some morons slagging him online recently, so that made me even more interested, and I went and picked out one of his games. Quartermaster General, 1914. This was a math trade. I wasn't a huge fan of the original Quartermaster General, but I've heard that this is the best of the series, so I thought I'd try it out. It's a well-loved series by everybody but me, so I might as well give it a second chance. And then Sicily, The Race for Messina, another S&T mag to quench my Italian thirst. And finally, Ney versus Wellington, The Battle of Quatre Bras. That's the final S&T magazine. I think this game has a good reputation, and for under $10, I'm happy to give it a go. I should also mention how fun it is reading these old magazines. The history articles, sure, they're great, but the letters to the editor and the editorials could be a blast. I also got an issue of Campaign magazine from 1979, and the editor there just can't quit slagging SPI. He seems to absolutely hate them. I was certainly a wargamer back in '79, but Campaign magazine wasn't on my radar. Too bad, it's pretty spicy stuff. Okay, you can probably hear that banging. We're having new siding put on the house, and they were working over on the other side of the house when I got set up to record this today, and now they're right outside my window. So I hope it's not too distracting. It's certainly distracting for me, but I don't want to go through the whole setup yet again. So we'll just press on. Well, it's time for my interview with Patrick Gebhardt. Patrick is one of the founders of Vuca Simulations, and I reached him across a wide stretch of time zones in his office in Germany. Here's the interview. I'm here with Patrick Gebhardt from Vuca Simulations. How are you, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
It's a funny. It's after dinner evening where you are, and lunchtime where I am. So I'm talking to you. You're in Berlin.
Cologne.
Cologne. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's north of Cologne.
Is Vuca's home Cologne, or well? Tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who's it. What makes up Vuca? Who is Vuca besides yourself?
Sure. So it's me and my best buddy, Julius, whom I know since we were kids, and he's also my best man. And in 2016, we founded a company. So we started off with creating a brand for poker supplies, poker cards made of plastic, and poker table mats, and poker chips, and all that stuff. And Julius was still in his studies. He studied law, and I was a full-time employee. So back then I didn't have a kid, so we had the time on the weekends and in the evenings. And then we set up the company, and I was playing war games since, I don't know, 2006-ish. And so we had all the infrastructure for a company in place, right? The distribution infrastructure for the poker stuff. And then we met Dirk Blenneman, and we had a convention in Germany, and we talked about game philosophy.
Yeah, and he's a designer, yeah?
Correct, yeah. He designed quite a lot of games with moments in history back then, and also a game with GMT, and so that was quite nice. So we thought, okay, let's try to publish a game together, because I was a diehard wargamer. And
is Julius a wargamer as well?
Julius, yeah, I made him. I forced him to be a wargamer. Now he likes playing war games, but he's not that fanatic as I am.
Right.
So he wouldn't.
So so Vuca is basically you and Julius.
Yeah, that's we're the founders. So Vuca, the company it's well, the poker and the Vuca company all together. We have 2 full-time employees, 3 part-time employees, and the 2 of us. That's just the basic staff, but we also have a lot of help from volunteers and freelancers, and yeah.
Right.
So
it's
of
course. Bigger. So what's the in terms of before we start talk more about Vuca, what's the wargaming scene like in Cologne? Is there clubs, or is there much wargaming?
Yeah, it's hard. So I found out about this niche. Well, in Germany, it's really a niche, right? So I found out about it via Board Game Geek, the internet.
Yeah.
And so I made Julius play the games with me. And then at some point, I met some guys from nearby through the internet, whom I meet occasionally still. But it's not like a big community here. And there's one big convention in Braunfels once a year. So we went there. That was fun, but it's not a big community over here.
Right. Germany is an interesting place to do war games because you've got rules about iconography and things like that that other countries don't have to. I mean, it's just a whole different, delicate situation in some ways.
All right, that's true.
Well, you still get to play.
Yeah, I mean, there's the computer war games and whatsoever, movies,
right?
Whatever. right? So we're just producing cardboard without any iconography, and we're also putting a strong emphasis on placing the games into historical context, right? So that's something you will find in almost all of our games, that we write a text about the historical context of the game. I think that's interesting because I like it myself. So
yeah, anybody who does historical game or anybody who plays historical games or war games, the history is a big part of why they're interested in the topic. Otherwise, they'd play Euro games or other hobby games, I'm sure. So that sort of historical context is really important. How big is the market for your games in Europe versus, now you're branching out into the U.S. and North America, but is there a good market in Europe?
Yes, it is. So actually, we're about 50-50 for US and the rest of the world. And Germany is not that big, but Spain is very big.
Spain and France have lots of publishers coming up, it seems. Yeah.
Italy also, there's quite something going on, so that's great. Yeah.
But you're branching into the US. You're now like warehousing product in the US and shipping from the US to.
Yes, US. Exactly. So we have a warehouse in Texas, a third-party logistics center, and they also fulfill our poker orders and poker stuff over there. So they will also take care of all the US and Canadian orders. Yeah.
Well, that's cool that you have the whole poker side to your business, because that must give you a bit of like a backstop, because poker's an evergreen kind of a game that everybody always loves.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when we started off, we had the company in place, right?
Right.
So we were already selling throughout all of Europe. We had like the tax registrations in all the European countries. We had the warehouses. We knew the production side and the logistics, and so all of that was already in place.
Right. You didn't have to start from scratch. You just, it's more like you were just adding new product lines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been difficult, I think, and a big risk to start without all this background, like starting from scratch. It's financial risk.
I think that's why we see so many small game companies start as one-man shows, that they've still got a day job and they're doing it out of their garage or whatever, and hoping that they can get big enough. Well, now that we know a little bit about Vuca, let's talk about your games. I've played quite a few of them, of course, but what's the biggest seller? In terms of
in terms of quantity of sold units, it's Crossing the Line. So that's the first game we produced. So it's on the market for the longest term, and we had a reprint, and it's sold out again. So it was quite good.
Right, and then the same system gets used in Operation Theseus.
Yes, exactly, and Across the Bug River, which is also sold out. And those three games all shared the same system, but they were quite different. And going forward, we decided to go with serious rules. So the next game in this line of games will have serious rule books and a game-specific rule book, and we're going forward with that approach from now.
It's an interesting decision when you have to decide whether you're going to go with the series and exclusive rules, because there's things you gain where people think, okay, I've learned the series rules, I don't have to learn as much, but it also kind of ties you into those rules a little bit. It makes it a little bit harder on the Chrome or the things that are going to be very specific to each game.
Yeah, you lose some flexibility, right? So that's why we had put a lot of work into this with Dirk, and just to make sure that we have all the most important things in the series rules, but also maintain a certain level of flexibility to portray different operations, different battles, right? Because Crossing the Line is totally different from Theseus.
the combat system is pretty much the same, right?
Yes. And the
I mean,
activation system also, where you have
right.
constantly to decide if you want to push it some more, but risk not being able to do much in the next turns. So, yeah.
Yeah. I have both of those games. Those were the first two games I bought of yours, and they're the same, and yet because of the setting, they're so completely different. One is all forest and one is all desert, right? It's like
yeah, right. And also with some of them, and particularly the Buck River game, it's a pretty long game, right? So we want to focus on providing smaller scenarios. So the first game will be called Mirages. It's a desert game with 4 different battles. So it's Battle Axe, Scorpion, Brevity, and Compass. And they are smaller. The map is not as big, and it's the perfect entry for the system.
Right. When I read about that, it made me immediately think of the old quad packs that used to come from SPI. I'm sure you've seen them. You're not probably old enough for when they came out, but it was 4 games.
I know a lot of old war games. Yes.
Yeah. I think people really respond well to the quad packs as entry points to get into a system as well.
Yeah, I think also the battles in this game, they wouldn't justify a full product in itself. So because they are smaller, right? And now we have 4 different scenarios. That's easier to justify. Right?
And I think people would rather buy 4 games in a 4 smaller games in a 4-pack than 4 like folio games that feel somehow when they're published on their own like that, they feel a bit insubstantial.
Yeah.
Well, some of the games you get designed by Dirk or yourself, or they're designed by scratch, but you guys also license previous designs or designers from elsewhere, like the remake of Task Force and things like that.
Exactly. Yes. So
do you just accept submissions, or how do you run across these designers and redo their things?
Yeah, actually, I reach out to them. So we have quite some Japanese designs from Tetsuya Nakamura, the Traces of series of games, Traces of War, Traces of Hubris, which is now released. And there's more games coming in the series. So I just reached out to him because I knew his other designs. And I don't know, A Victory Lost, for example, from MMP.
And it is the other one about the Pacific War. I can't remember what it is. He had some great designs with him.
Yeah, the area movement game, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so you reached out to him, and what about now? You also you have a co-design with Jack Green. That's another guy that's like a long history in the game.
Yeah.
How did you team up with Jack?
Yeah, so he reached out to us when we just started business, and he wanted to sell some games, and he did. So because he has this small shop, right, Quarterdeck International. And so that's how we met each other. And I stumbled across the Bismarck 2nd edition, I guess, from Avalon Hill, if I'm not wrong here. And I played it with Julius. And I found some things I would change or optimize, and I reached out to Jack and asked if he would be open to doing a new game on that operation, and he was into it, and then we started. And since then, we have met in the US. So we made a road trip like 3 years ago. And then last year we met again, made another road trip for 1 week straight. That was great. So he's a great guy.
So in addition to, Dirk's got some previous games as well, right? Like you said, modern history. So you've got a lot of established designers working with Vuca. Really, it's not like you're starting your design house from ground zero. There's a lot of experience starting out already.
Yeah, so we have a good mix, I guess. We have some new designers. We have some established designers making new games. We have some games that we just do new versions or updated editions. So it's a good mix. Yeah, I'm glad that people tend to work together with us.
Yeah, I think you got a good mix as well. Speaking of new games, you guys sent me a copy of Red Strike. I played the intro ground scenarios, the learning air scenarios, and the naval scenarios, and now I'm right at the point where you need to start putting it all together. The next scenario is ground and air or naval and air, and I'm sure it's probably your most expensive game. The box is like, it feels like it's 10 or 15 pounds. Yeah. And that's with paper maps. That's not even that's not a box full of mounted maps. Right. It's just a ton in that box. And I imagine it's daunting for people, but I find the individual systems, like the ground system, the air system, and the naval system, are all really straightforward. But the part that makes you stop and really have to think is once you start putting those together, it's like, what's the best way to use my air with my ground, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not a matter of complexity of rules, but a complexity of, it's not how I do it, but it's what do I do?
Yeah, right. Which order? So you want to reconnoiter first and then send in the bombers or whatever. And yeah, I think the rule book from Eve is great because it reads like a book, right? You can follow all the mechanics and it just clicks. So I think it's not that complex, but it's a lot. And as you said, you have to learn one part of it at a time, and then the hard part is how to combine it, how to bring it all together. But that's the fun of it. So.
Well, and there's a ton of scenarios in that box as well.
Yeah,
it's like for people who are like really into the Cold War gone hot, that whole period. I think other than it looks a bit daunting because it's so big, but I think it should be a big success in that space because it's, and I think there's like maybe 4 pages of errata, which seems not very much.
Yes. Yeah. So as of now, I'm gonna upload a new living rules and living charts file probably tomorrow. So it'll be available soon. And yeah, it's just with a project of that complexity, right? Even though we had a lot of play testers and lots of volunteers helping out also on that project, it's unavoidable to have some kind of errata in such a big complex project. So
well, yeah, sure.
But I think we're doing the best we can. We will provide all the living rules and all the corrected files as PDFs, and yeah.
Well, I mean, Task Force is a big game as well, and the errata for that is like not even half a page. So
yeah, but Task Force it's a different thing, right? Because it was a game that has existed for a long time and it was tested and played. And I mean, Red Strike is a new game from built from scratch, and yeah, it is how it is.
Yves Rattel, is that the designer?
Yes.
He's very active in the forums on BG2. He answers things right away.
He's amazing. Also, if you have the game, you should join the Facebook group because he's very proactive there. He's very, very active still on Red Strike, right? He's working on the next games in the series with the same rules. So he's working together with Mark Herman on a new Gulf Strike game.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, he's working on Arctic Strike game, which will probably be the next one, a smaller one, where we will provide some errata counters also for Red Strike. And then also a game about the Falklands. So he's dribbling multiple projects at a time, right? Yeah.
Well, he's got the combat system. He's got a really interesting combat system going on with that game. I think if anybody hasn't tried it, they should, watch a video or something and get a feel for it, because I think that it's compelling.
Yeah. Yeah, he also made a video series of about, I don't know, 40 videos or something.
Yes, he
When
breaks. He
all
did him with Mo's Game Table. He did
Yeah.
a series of 40 videos or something like that, where he breaks down every little piece into, like a 3 or 4 minute video.
Yeah.
I didn't watch all of them, but when I was learning the game, whenever I had something I was unclear on, I'd go and see if there was a video on it, and 9 times out of 10 there was.
All right. Yeah, he's a great guy. So he's fully supportive of the game still. If there's any questions, or even if someone finds a mistake or whatever, he will add it to the errata. And yeah, he's still supporting Red Strike. So
yeah, well, that's what you want for sure. That's what the players want. Because people are going to be coming to the game new for years, right?
Yeah,
well,
it's not fire and forget with our games, though.
What unless there's something that you want to talk about the rest of your catalog, I'd like to talk about some of the new games that you've got coming, because I'm excited about a few of them. Especially the first one is 1812, Napoleon's Fateful March. Let's talk about that. Makes me think of one thing. You guys have already got such a name for yourself in terms of the quality of your components and your graphics.
Yeah, thanks.
Your games, the counters are thick. They're pre-cut, pre-rounded. The artwork is always great. Like, all your box covers are great, and this new one for Napoleon's Fateful March, that box cover is just a knockout. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
This is Brian Asklev, and he's got like a couple of games from GMT from about a decade ago, and he's got another one that's on P500 right now. How did he end up bringing this game to you guys instead of GMT, where he normally had been publishing?
Actually, I don't really remember how we came together, if it was him reaching out, because from time to time I see prototypes and, I don't know, Facebook or Board Game Geek or wherever, and things I think look interesting. I will reach out to the designers, right? It could be that it was such an occurrence. I don't remember, to be honest. But,
it doesn't really matter. The good thing is that
Brian is very nice to work with, because with all the different game projects we have, and the poker side also, my time is pretty limited these days, unfortunately, right? But I can't devote too much time into a single game, and that's why I'm super happy to have such great designers who will be very proactive. And yeah, so the 1812 project went very smoothly.
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's basically the Moscow campaign, but not. It's like the Moscow campaign all the way to Moscow, but all the way back as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's different scenarios,
right,
and it depends. Right, you can play shorter scenarios, but it goes until the end of November, so it's not quite the way back.
Well, not all the way then. So, but this is his first Napoleonic game, so this is this is something new for him as well.
Yeah, and I think he has done a great job, because there's so much history in the game. It's card driven, right? So well, at least cards supported somehow, and you have flavor in these cards, right? So both sides have cards that portray events from that time. You have the leaders portrayed with different advantages or disadvantages, and yeah, he packed a lot into it, but it's not that complex.
Well, and it's supposed to have some like a sort of a secret orders system too. That sounds a little
exactly.
Other card games.
Yeah, you have order blocks. So you have a set of orders, and you will place a certain number of order blocks on your on the areas where you have units. And those can be dummy orders, or they can be move orders, or attack orders, or all sorts of different orders you can do. And they will be revealed one order type at a time. So you'll start with forced march orders, and both sides will reveal forced march orders, but they will not reveal the other orders. So you're never sure what orders are still left on the areas of your opponent.
Right. Yes. This game has. I've stickered my copy. I haven't played it yet. For orders, but there's counters, there's blocks, there's cards, and the whole package just looks beautiful as always.
Yeah, thanks. So that was done by Wouter, who is a designer we met at in Essen at the Spiel,
Yeah.
the big game trade fair. And yeah, so we just made a project together, and we were happy, more than happy, and he was also happy. So we're just working on next games.
If you got a guy with an eye like that, you should keep him.
Yeah, that's true.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Well, the other one that was just on pre-order, but you say it's just come out, is Traces of Hubris by Tetsuya Nakamura.
Yes.
And that's he's the same person who did the Traces of War game, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So this new one is Case Blue in the South, and the other one was kind of the Curse campaign. I think I haven't played Traces of War yet.
After that, yeah, it was the more like the winter in 43, I guess, 43, 44.
And so he's one, like we were talking about him. He did a Victory Lost, and Fire in the Sky is the other one that I was thinking.
Yeah, Fire in the Sky. That's right. Yeah.
But he had some games with. I think he actually even had Storm over Stalingrad. I have that one as well.
Yes. Yes.
So he had a few games with MMP, but now he seems to be he's bringing all his stuff to you guys, which is not so bad, because his games hit at a really nice. Not too difficult, but not introductory exactly either.
Yeah.
His games hit at a really nice point.
Yeah, I think Victory Lost was one of my favorite games. It's one of my most played games, personally. So I like that it's very easy in terms of rules, because you will never have to reference the rule book again, and it's super easy. But the complexity is in the decisions.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what I like. So that's why I'm super happy to have the other games in the kind of series, with the Traces of War, Traces of Hubris, and the other ones. And that's cool. Because it's personal favorites of mine, right?
Yeah, so you got his old games, but Traces of War and Traces of Hubris were brand new designs. They weren't remakes like the other games.
Yeah, he has done them. Yeah, for his Japanese magazine,
right?
Like the Japanese game journal. But he didn't license the game in English language. So
yeah, Japan has a pretty good wargaming scene as well. We see a lot of stuff come out of there, and we're only seeing a trickle of whatever gets translated.
Yeah, that's true, and they have such clean designs. I don't know, there's something special to it, and but it also involves some work, right? Because with the translation stuff, it's not always easy.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's I know two people who translate Japanese to English, and it's just nothing I could ever imagine doing.
Yeah, and you can just simply use Google Translate, so it doesn't work.
No, exactly. So the 1812 game and the Traces of the Hubris are the two things on pre-order right now, or available to order.
Yeah, we just released them like today. So
right, there you go.
We'll have all the pre-orders out in the coming days, and so that's our newest releases, 1812 and Traces of Hubris.
I know a few others that I've tracked down, but maybe we could talk about those.
Sure.
Yeah, things like we talked about the Formation series. That was going to be the quad pack on North Africa, and so that my question was, that is going to be the same system as the Gazala game and the Crossing the Line game.
Yes, exactly. So it's
Same
the same system. So yeah, maybe in some small areas we did some adjustments, but basically it's the same system, just going forward with serious rules. So we have the marriages in which is going to the printer pretty soon, and then we have a game about Caen in 1944 in France, the West Front, and British. Yeah, so that game will have two full-size maps, but they will not be combined together in a big scenario, but you will have different scenarios, each on a single map then. Then we have a game about Voronezh, which is in design stage, the drive on Voronezh, and a game about the early days of the war and the Battle of Tomaszów in Poland. Yeah, that's the 4 projects in the Formation series, which
and Dirk doing all of those, or are they getting farmed out of?
No, Dirk is designing the Marriages game, and the other 3 games are done by other designers. So Dirk's working on other projects, but yeah.
But those other designers will be using his series rules as the basics.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he's good. So you've got your first sort of big series.
Yeah.
What you're calling the Formation series. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to have a series and then just publish a game all like every 3 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's been a popular series. Like the people like those games for sure. Another one I saw that you're doing is called Modern Tactics #1 Afghanistan. That's probably your first modern topic, I would imagine.
Yeah, with Red Strike, right? But it's modern.
Red sort of modern, yeah.
Yeah, sort of modern, right? It's okay. Yeah, Modern Tactics. Yeah, that's a tactical game. That's our first.
Yeah. It's the same designer as Old School Tactical, is that right?
Yes, exactly. It's Shane Logan, the designer of Old School Tactical, and it's basically Old School Tactical brought over to modern times. And we'll also make it a series. So we're working on the series rulebook, and we're about 95% there, I guess. We're just doing a final proofreading. And see if we can optimize something, because we want to have the unit data cards optimized and so on. Yeah, but it's not far away.
Right. Okay. Before I have a few more games to ask you about, but that made me think in terms of how you bring games from design and through to publication. Do you use developers, or do you do a lot of the development work? Like, are you the main developer, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it depends on the game and the designer, obviously. We have some designers which do not require as much of development work. And we have some designers which we need to, I don't know, kind of lead through the process, right? But so far, I played each single game of ours myself. And Julius and me, we're very much looking into the rule books in the development process, and checking if we can optimize some play rates or some, I don't know, if we can optimize it didactically, if that's the correct word. I don't know. Yeah, so we're doing a lot of development work ourselves, but we also have guys taking care of it. So sometimes it's a lot of volunteers which help out, and yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. But even if the game doesn't need development at the end stage, it always needs proofreading. It needs fresh eyes to see things that have been read so many times that they're not really being read anymore.
Yeah, and even if we have like 5 people reading over the rules, the 6th one will still find any issues in the rules. It's
yeah, it's the nature of human beings.
That's it.
Okay, well that's interesting to know. Going back to some of the new things you have come out, there's a game you have called Seminole Catastrophe. That it says the game covers 1850 to 1920. That's an interesting chunk of time. What conflicts, like what's being modeled there? What's the subject of the game?
Yeah, so that's a very exciting project. It's about great power alliances. It's about the German unification. It's about Italian unification. It's about influence, and it's loosely based on the Here I Stand game from GMT. Right. So it shares some of the mechanics. It's card driven.
Multiplayer then as well.
Like it's 6 players.
6 players, okay.
Yeah, 6 players, but there's bot rules. So if you have 5 or less players, you can do that. And the thing is, each player has a set of objective cards, and each player has his individual objectives to score victory points. And it is possible that the Great War breaks out, but it's not necessary. So it could be theoretically that all 6 powers win by being peaceful and achieve all their objectives and score the same amount of victory points. It's possible, but I guess it will not happen too often.
Right, they have to score exactly the same amount of points each.
Yeah, and then if the Great War breaks out, the victory conditions totally change. So it's a game about alliances. You can have powers, and the 6 major powers can be in alliances, either on the Allied, the Triple Alliance, Triple, or the Entente. Yeah, that's the 2 sides. And in the Great War, you can also have neutral players, and you just play out the Great War, and then at the end, it's over, and you'll see who wins.
That's an idea that I don't think I've seen anywhere before. To take like games that are 1750 to 1790, we see maybe games in that range, but to take it all the way through the period of the Great War. From like you say, from the reunifications in Europe right through, that's a big chunk of history to do all at once. That's I can't wait to see this. I'm not much of a player, but I like to see how these things work.
Yeah, for me personally, I read the rules, I proofread them. I spent so many hours on the game, but I haven't played it yet. So I'm excited to play it at Consum World Expo, hopefully. So we'll bring a prototype copy with the pretty much final graphics, and then I hope we can get some games in, because I'm very excited for it. But I want to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's going to be something new. In terms of something old, you've got 1916 Prelude to Blitzkrieg. That's the same system as 1914 Not Paris. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Correct. It's somewhat simplified.
So is it as big as Not Paris? Because that's a pretty big game.
Yes, but also Nach Paris, the 1914 game, also provides scenarios, like scenarios and so on. But Romania is smaller, and it's a bit less, I don't know, fiddly, if that's the correct term.
That's a big word in my vocabulary, talking about games.
Just a bit streamlined and but also 1916, I haven't played myself yet. So I guess in November we're gonna do a playtest session in Switzerland and Switzerland. Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. But I guess it's getting coming along nicely.
Right. So that one, that's farther down the road than say Seminole Catastrophe. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What about In Force to Heaven, about the invasion of Poland in 1939? What can you tell me about that one?
Yeah, it's about, I think, 95% ready also. So it's not that far away. It's a big game, lots of counters, big maps, but we will also provide lots of smaller scenarios. And it's done by a Polish designer who is very passionate about that period and Polish history in general. And he's passionate about that game project in particular. And yeah, he brought in lots of fresh ideas. So the whole activation mechanics and all the he implemented some mechanics like daily foot ranges where you can move infantry units multiple times in a day, because a day can consist of multiple turns, but they can only march a certain amount of hexes. And that's it. And I don't know. There's a lot of different mechanics which I haven't seen so far.
I heard it described as strategic, but is it a strategic game or is it more operational?
Yeah, it's both. So you can see it on the operational level. You will move your units and so on, but it also has strategic levels to it. So you have to choose how to use your air units. And yeah, it's hard to explain. To be honest.
It's interesting and not surprising with a Polish designer that it's got that much enthusiasm. I talked to Vezar Ponin about his game about Finland, and he was a Finnish designer, passionate about Finnish history as well, right?
Yeah, but oftentimes you see the Polish campaign as being very one-sided, right? And that's not ultimately the case. Like the Polish army really stood up and put in a good fight there, and you have a lot of that portrayed in the game. And yeah.
Well, fantastic. What about the Far Seas? This is a World War I naval game.
It's a naval game. It's about the German cruisers and the early days of the Great War, and it's a game that was published in, I think, the 80s or the 90s by Martin Anderson. And we met each other last year at Console World Expo, and he showed us the game, and we played it, and I liked it because it's very interactive. It's fast going. It's not taking forever to play out. And so we said, okay, let's do this project together. And also here we found lots of things to optimize. So it's not a straight reprint, but it's kind of like what we did with Bismarck. We took an existing game, but then changed some things, optimized things. And, yeah.
With the Far Seas, with naval games, one of the big questions is the hidden move. When the two sides don't know where the other side is. That's always the question. How does the Far Seas deal with that problem?
Yeah, that's a good question. In Bismarck, we have the double blind system, right?
Yeah.
Which works well when you have one side chasing the other side. And that's the case also with the Far Seas. But here we have one shared map where we have like open information. But the German player will, in a turn, he will state which ship or ships he's going to move, and he will note down where he's going to move and what he's doing, if he's going for the merchant ships or doing a station raid or whatever. And then the British player can choose to move as many of his or her units as they like. And then the German player shows and then moves his committed units, and then it plays out.
Fantastic.
German player moves first, but just notes down the target of the move, and then it's the British player moving his units, and then it's the German player moving the units. Yeah.
It's the whole thing of the hidden. It's like it's a popular subject in wargaming these days. So I think you've got good timing to be working on a naval game.
Yeah, it leads to some more tension in the game.
Yeah.
And it's not always applicable in games. Right? You can only have so much units to move, otherwise it doesn't work. But in the far seas, you have a handful of German cruisers, and that's it. So.
Right. Yeah. That's all the games that I'm aware of. But do you have other things you want to talk about that are that you're working on that you haven't told the world about yet?
Yeah, so for 1812, the game we just released, Brian is already working on other projects. So we're making it a series as well. So the next ones will be 1813. And then it's 1814 in the making afterwards. So the drive back to France, the retreat to France. That's something we're working on, and we have New Cold War. That's a very exciting game also. It's a 4-player game, and it takes place in 3 decades. So it's 89 until 2019, and it's a bit Twilight Struggle-ish, I would say. It's what people think if they see the map. So you have a world map, and the big 4 powers. It's the US, Europe, China, and Russia. They compete for control of countries and regions, and it's a card-driven game. And the special thing is that all 4 players gonna place their played card in the center of the board at the start of a game round, and they will reveal the card at the same time, and you can play them for the ops or for the events, and it depends if it's an own event or enemy event, whatever, and then you're going to resolve them one after the other. And it's about scoring victory points and scoring or achieving objectives. So each player has an individual deck of objective cards, and they are hidden, and you want to score those objectives to earn victory points.
The idea of having all 4 players play the cards at once and then reveal it once.
Yeah, and you also have to. Yeah, right, and you have to cooperate with the partner or your ally from the same block, which is for the US, obviously it's Europe. So there's a media track, for example, and the media track, the media marker, it swings like a pendulum between the blue block, US and Europe, and the red block, which is Russia and China. So you have to cooperate there, but only one power will win at the end. So you have also managed to keep down your ally somewhat.
Like a true coin game in a way.
Somewhat, yeah. It's
just
very
a way of having someone you have to cooperate with, but still beat in the end.
Yeah, it's really a very nice game. I played it oftentimes already, and we have finalized all the components except for the rule book, which I'm working on at the moment. So it's not that far away, and it also comes with bot rules. And so I just saw pictures today from the designers, who are 2 Spanish guys, by the way, and they sent. It's 2 Spanish guys.
Right.
And they have
We know
sent
them.
me. They didn't do any previous designs.
Right. This is their first games. Okay.
Yeah, and they've sent me a picture of a non-player game, which was just bots, because it has bot rules, which are somewhat different. You have a priority charts where you can see which countries and which regions which bot power has to like control or to influence, and they have certain special rules. So they get automatic media points in certain turns and so on to make up for the not being a human player. And they just did a non-player game with 4 bots, and it was like at the end of the first decade, the scoring was like 55 victory points for the leading power, and then 54, 53, 52. So
Wow.
it was super close. So that shows that it really works.
And are we looking at 2025 for that? 2025 for that?
I hope for 24 this year.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I think it's I don't know. You can play it often, right? Again and again, and it will always play out differently because of the events. And you also have a special mechanic I haven't seen anywhere else, which is the UN. You have sort of veto counters, and so you can, whenever there's an event that you don't like because it's very beneficial to an opponent or very bad for yourself, you can veto it. So it comes with a cost of victory points, but then the event is canceled and it doesn't take place. And also Europe and China, they are restricted from some regions from the start of the game. And so they need cards which open up regions and make them accessible for them. And then that's always something you might consider to veto, right? To contain the opponents. And yeah, it's fun.
What's the average playing time for it?
I think we played it in average about 4 hours. I'd say 4 hours, 5 hours. The first game is probably a bit longer, but I think for an evening or maybe a long evening, it's doable. You will finish it.
Yeah, perfect.
And you can also have, you can have shorter games depending on the situation. And if one player is very good, you can achieve a sudden death, like a sudden end. But usually you will play the 3 decades. 1 decade is 3 turns, and each turn you will play 3 cards. So it's 27 cards. Let me see. Yeah.
27 cards, 3 times 3 times 3.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, fantastic. I look forward to that one. Anything else you want to tell us about? I should ask also, while I'm thinking about this, some of these new games I couldn't find on your website. Do you have I look on your website, I see what's for sale, but
that's true. So first off, we duplicated our online shop because up until, I don't know, 2 months ago, we had one online shop for all the orders, which led to some difficulties for the fulfillment partners. So we duplicated the online store. So we have one for the US and Canada, and the other store for the rest of the world. And so that means we have to create content for both, right? Which increases effort. And then also I placed some information about projects we're working on the European web shop, but I just noticed we didn't place it on the other shop. So
that's probably why I didn't see it.
I have to keep track of that. And also I'm aware that we could communicate a lot more. So for tomorrow, I'm intending to send out a newsletter. And yeah, that's it's just a matter of the time, right? So I'm hoping to be able to communicate a bit more in the future. Yeah.
Well, when this post, I'll put a link to your newsletter along with it, so that anybody who hasn't signed up for it can make sure they hear from you.
Cool. That's great. Yeah. So I don't know. Well, I would say maybe if you join some conventions, you will always have the opportunity to meet us and talk to us and discuss things or play with us. So we'll be at Console World Expo this year in Tempe. We'll be at the WBC, World Board Gaming Championships. Then we intend to go to the Batalladores in Spain. We've been to PunchCon in the UK, which will be going next year again for sure. And yeah, so that's we're going to lots of conventions just to play and meet people and discuss things. So whenever you have the chance, you see us there, please approach us, talk to us. Yeah.
Well, the closest one you come to me is if I can get down to Tempe, because I'm way out west in terms of North America.
Right.
Maybe sometime you'll get down to San Diego. I've been to that one before as well.
Yeah, it's SD HISCON.
SD HISCON, yeah. Harold Buchanan's baby.
Yeah, right. I have it on my bucket list.
Right. Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's always also a matter of time, right? Because my wife will kill me if I'm going to go to the US like 3 times a year, and then yeah.
Well, you have to take her. Bring the kids.
Yeah, that's true, but maybe next year.
San Diego is a beautiful place to go for a holiday.
Yeah, I bet. That'd be
okay. Well, unless there's something to talk about, I think we've got a good sense of who Vuca is now and what you're up to, and we've talked about quite a few of the games out of your catalog, both what's available now and what's coming up. I think we've given a pretty good view of what's going on with Vuca.
Yeah, thanks so much. So also, I want to say if any of the listeners maybe has problems or questions or concerns with any of our games, just reach out with email or Facebook, or I also have my WhatsApp on our website, so you can also write me there. I see it instantly. Just reach out. So we try to do our best in communicating and replying, responding, but sometimes it can happen that something is that we just miss something. Just approach us. Right?
Well, good. We'll I'll see what I can do about putting those sorts of links when I post this as well.
Awesome.
I've always found you guys totally responsive when I've had a question about a game. So
cool.
I don't think you guys have anything to worry about there. Yeah, I know you always have the feeling like you could be doing more, but like there's only 24 hours in a day.
That's true. Yeah, that's especially true with the game development, right? Because at some point you have to cut a project and just wrap it up, because you will always find anything to improve.
Well, it's games, movies, paintings. They're never really finished. They're just ended.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Patrick. We'll say goodbye then, and best of luck with Vuca. I'm always looking forward to whatever you guys are putting out there.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
2 things struck me about my conversation with Patrick. First, thank heaven for Poker Supplies. I think they're underwriting an exciting new publisher. And then second, doesn't he seem like relaxed and cool? No worries, just expanding a fledgling company into North America. Good for him. Maybe you got to be that cool to take those sorts of gambles in business. Anyway, time to take a look at a new game from Vuca, 1812 Napoleon's Fateful March, designed by Brian Askalev. This is an interesting game with some fog of war mechanics that I find really compelling. It's an operational scale game, which you don't always see a ton of in the Napoleonic space, or I don't know, maybe it's just me. I've got a ton of Napoleonic battle games, but not so many operational games. The game includes the entire campaign to Moscow and back, but also a few scenarios cutting up into smaller chunks like you might expect. I intend today to just kind of give it a bit of an overview of how it works. If you want a deeper look, you can check out a couple of videos I've done on it. One is an unboxing where you can get a good look at the components, and then another is an overview similar to what I'm doing here, but with video and images as well. So it's a fair bit fuller. The components are the same kind of quality we've come to expect from Vuca: pre-rounded counters, beautiful mat board, and the player aid cards are printed on cardboard that's as thick as the counters, so pretty deluxe all around. My only quibble with the components is there's a handful of infantry counters from other nationalities that come with the French. They look exactly like the French counters, but they have a tiny little flag in the lower left. A bigger flag or some other colors or something would have made these much easier to find and to just see that and remember that they aren't strictly French. It's not a card-driven game, though it might appear to be. We've got the classic card with what looks like ops in the upper right corner and events along the main text of the card. You also see in the upper right a symbol, so some of the events are for combat. Sometimes the card is for maneuver, different things like that. So not all cards are just strictly universal. Some are meant for one phase of a game or another. The other thing about this game is you have a lot of hidden information. Each leader in the game has its own little screen. On the back of the screen, you can see any special abilities that particular leader might have. And then the way the screens work is you place the leader counter or standee on the board, wherever it goes on the board, but then you put all the units that are to be stacked with him behind the little screen off board. So your opponent doesn't know what units any particular leader has. The other interesting thing about this game that relates to hidden information is the game is orders driven. Each side will get a certain number of orders from a variety of types that they can choose from and then play each turn. The orders are things like march, force march, forage, defense, things like that. There's 10 or 12 different types. There's a limit on how many of each type each side has to choose from. And the mix of orders is asymmetrical. That is, the French pool of orders is slightly different from the Russian pool. And then both sides also have 4 blocks indicating dummy orders. I say blocks because these orders are on blocks. You sticker the blocks, you put the type of order just on one side, which means the game uses counters, blocks, and cards. They got all the bases covered, I guess. Anyway, with these blocks, with the orders on one side, what's going to happen during the course of a turn is each player will have a certain number of orders that they can put out, and they'll put them out, but they'll put them out facing away from their opponent so their opponent can't see which orders are where. So there's a certain order that all of the orders get revealed, and then you look at, say, all the force marches first, then any force marches will have to be flipped up, and you resolve them, and then you go on to the next order, and then the next. And so there's quite a game of cat and mouse bluffing with these order blocks because, as I said, some can be just dummy orders as well. The other component, big component, of course, is the board. It's a fairly decent sized board. It runs from basically Moscow in the upper right over to Riga in the top left, and then down to Kyiv in the center of the south. It's a point-to-point map and attractive while still being very functional looking. So as you expect with Vuca, all the components look pretty great. Anyway, let's go. Here's how the game works. Once you've got everything set up, started up, you've picked your scenario, set up all the pieces, you're ready to go. Each turn then starts with a resources phase where if it's not the first turn, you're going to get some replacements, maybe, things like that. And then you draw your hand, and then each scenario is going to start with one side or the other having initiative. There's a track for that on the board, a little initiative marker, and depending on winning or losing battles, that initiative marker is going to move back and forth, or maybe even flip over to the other player, and they'll take over the initiative. Anyway, you get your hand. The next thing that happens is you can play one of the cards out of your hands to get additional orders this turn. Each player puts a card face down, so neither knows if the other is going for extra orders or not. Each player also has, in addition to their hand of cards, some dummy cards, so you can play a dummy card to pretend you want additional orders, or play a real card, and that's going to give you a lot more of those little order blocks that we talked about earlier. Each player then reveals whether they get the additional orders or not, and once they figured out how many orders, each one gets each player. Each one secretly takes their full complement of orders and picks out the ones they want. They assign their orders to units or leaders on board. Strictly by rules, it goes back and forth with each player playing one order and then another, then the other player back and forth. But there's also an optional rule that says to speed up play, both players can just place out all their orders at the same time if you're not really worried about who's going to play what where. If you are worried about that on one supercharged turn or something, you can go back to the one-by-one method whenever you think it might make a difference. You're going to, as I said, stand the orders upright, so all your opponents are going to be able to see is the flag side of the order or the blank side. They'll know there's orders there, but they're not going to know what order, and it may just be a dummy order. Once all the orders are placed, it's time for action. Order resolution has a very specific order. The types of orders are executed in the same order each turn. We start with the force march order, then we do the cavalry patrols, then we do the march order, then evade, then battles, and so on until we get through the whole list. So the first thing is each player reveals any of its extended march orders, and then they're resolved. It's also worth noting that if, say we're in the force march order resolution phase, if there's multiple force marches revealed, then the player with initiative says who has to resolve one of theirs first, and then you go back and forth. So that's another advantage of being the initiative player. So, if I'm the French and I have the initiative, I say you resolve yours first, then the Russian player has to resolve one of their force marches, and then I resolve one of mine, and back and forth until all the force marches are done. And then we move on to the next order type, which is cavalry patrols. This order can only be done, of course, by either cavalry or Cossacks, and it basically helps you scout out the enemy's orders. Next up is march orders. The march orders come after the forced march orders, so you're going to have to do all your forced marches 2 steps ahead of your marches. So you'll have a little bit more idea about what your opponent is doing by the time you start doing marches, which is interesting. Because the forced marches were done with almost no information. Again, this is all back and forth with you, then me, then you, then me, until there's no more marches to be done. If you have multiple units in a spot where you place an order, at least one of them has to execute that order if possible. So if you had 4 units in a spot, say, that had a march order, and then you find you really didn't want to move all of them out because something of your opponent is, you're going to have to move one out, but you don't have to move all 4 as long as at least one executes the order. Next up comes evade. You may have placed an evade order in a place where you were worried your opponent was going to move in and give you battle there, and you felt your side was not going to be able to stand up to whatever the opponent did. If you have one of those evade orders there, you're going to be able to move out before you get slaughtered in the battle. After all the evasions have been made, then it's time to resolve any battles. When you're resolving battles, that's the only time defend orders come into play. They're going to give you a little bit of a defense bonus. Obviously, you're going to do a little better than if you didn't have one of those orders on units when you're in a battle space. You resolve all the battles, and then next we have rally. If you have any units under rally markers, it's going to be your chance to take them from their exhausted side and get them back on their fresh side. And then we finally have a couple smaller orders. We have an order for the Russians only, Cossack raids, lets them do a little raiding. And then finally, both sides have the possibility of a depot order. Each side starts with some depots on board, but this order gives you a chance to place a new depot. You want to get these depots strung out closer to where the action is. As the closer you are to your units, that's going to reduce your attrition. It's basically going to put you in a closer supply. So we'll have moved some units, we'll have resolved some battles, evaded, defended, what have you, and after all that's done, we have an attrition phase, and that's where the forage orders come in. Because depending on the season, there's going to be some attrition in each area, and foraging will help you stave off some of that attrition. We all know about Napoleon's march to Moscow, where disease and malnutrition were probably just as harmful as the battle losses on the way there and back. Not a lot of living off the land. Okay. So here's a quick look at how combat looks. Let's say one side marched into a location where the other side has units. Battle will need to be resolved there. The very first thing is if either player wants to play a battle card, they do it right off the top. the card will tell you what the specific effect is. It sometimes gives you extra strength, sometimes maybe a special ability or something. Next, you count up the value of your units and see how strong you are. Both sides does that. And then we roll the battle dice. Each side has a custom battle die, and they're not the same. The French one is a bit stronger, but is also more affected by weather. The Russian one has got a sort of a flatter set of results. Anyway, we roll the dice, add the Russian amount to the Russian combat value, and add the blue amount to the French value. And you get to modify your count a little bit by a few other things, like infantry always counts as 1, but if you have special guard infantry, they count as 1.5. If you're using cavalry, they normally count as 1, but if you're in a fortress area, say, they only count as a half. There's a few things like that. Anyway, both sides roll, and then they're going to get a number, and you look at this little battle table. It's not really a combat results table, but a battle table, and it's going to tell you how many losses you've inflicted. Whoever caused the most losses is the winner. The loser has to take that loss and retreat, and the winner can pursue and maybe cause a few more losses. And then depending on the losses, there's going to be a shift in the victory points, and also depending on the losses, it might also affect the initiative track as well. So that's the end of the battle. You're going to go on, make all those little adjustments, and then move on to the next battle. I should also say a little word about attrition. So after we've done all the movement, we've done the battles, then we do this rallying. The infantry units and the cavalry units have a fresh side where they count as 1, but they can become exhausted and then they're not as effective. So there's this attrition phase at the end of the end of the turn, and the attrition depends on how many units you have in a certain area, and then how far they are away from the nearest depot marker. So if you're close to a depot marker, you're going to lose less to attrition than if you're far away from a depot. And attrition is also a bit variable as there's a roll involved. And this is where those forage orders help. Each forage marker reduces attrition by 2. So anyway, that's it for the turn. The VPs move as the battles happen, and when the final turn is played, the winner basically is determined by victory points. It's a really interesting game from what I can see so far. I think the added fog of war here is what's really interesting. The only other game I can think of that has a similar fog of war mechanic is the Napoleon, in the Napoleonic space, is Shakos Napoleon 1806, 1807, 1815 series. There you have the leaders on board and your units hidden behind a screen as well. So it's got the fog of war in terms of how strong each leader is. But Vuca's 1812, Napoleon's Fateful March, goes one step further and adds in the hidden order system. And that's going to mean it feels, I don't know, to me it feels like there's going to be just a little more game in the game, for lack of a better way to put it. I really look forward to playing that. I say that because I haven't managed to play it opposed yet, but I'm just dying to. I don't think because of all that fog of war it's going to be a terrific game solo. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't even say that. Dedicated solo players find a way to play pretty much anything solo. So if you're a solo player, don't let me put you off this game that way. But it does have a fair bit of hidden stuff, which is not the solo player's best friend. All that said, I really look forward to it. I didn't talk about it too much, but I'm really interested in how each of the leaders has their own unique special abilities, and how some can do one thing and some can do another, and then some can't do much of anything extra at all. I think it's going to really add a lot of flavor. And I think I'll also, learn the 2 decks. Through the 2 decks, there's, well, sure, learn. I shouldn't say I'm going to learn the 2 decks. I never play any game enough to really learn the deck. But what I mean is, as I play the game and I start to experience the decks, I think that's going to be a really exciting as well. There's going to be a ton of flavor there too. Just to see what the surprises the deck have in store. I love the first few plays of a game when you really don't know what's in the decks. So there you go. That's 1812, Napoleon's Fateful March from Vuca Simulations and designer Brian Askalev. I can't wait to see what everybody thinks about it, and to actually get to play it opposed and see how it goes. Bouquets. Well, here let me give a shout out to San Diego HISCon. I gave them a bit of a hard time online recently because the dates for their fall convention weren't on their website. It's November 8th to 11th. I was looking for those dates because I'm I'm planning on heading down there again. They've taken advantage of the holiday Monday and added an extra day. So instead of 3 days like last year, it's going to be 4 days this year. As I said, I'm doing everything I can to get back there. It was a terrific time last year, and if you make it, maybe I'll see you there. Parting shots. Well, here's something I didn't think I'd see in these days of quick takes and short attention spans. I saw someone thank a blogger for doing a text article with graphics rather than a video. Totally surprised me. It was cool because I'd been thinking I wanted to increase the written content of Pushing Cardboard and put more stuff on the website. And this was confirmation that there just might be an audience for that sort of thing. I guess some folks prefer the written word as they can read it faster than we can speak it. So hopefully, there's only so many hours in a day, but I'm going to work on this and give it a whirl, see if I can find a way to present most things that I do in at least 2 forms and not all, if not in all 3, audio, video, and text. See what we can do. Anyway, thanks again to those who have become ongoing supporters of Pushing Cardboard, either through YouTube or through the Ko-Fi link on my website. And thanks as well to those who take the time to use my affiliate link when shopping at Noble Knight Games. I really appreciate it. That's it for another episode of Pushing Cardboard. Who knows when you'll hear from me next? Could be on the podcast, could be a video, could be a post on the website. It could just be a note on Twitter saying I stretched myself too thin and Mrs. Pusher has hid my computer for a while. Anyway, whenever it is, until then, happy gaming.